back to the channel, and we are going to be doing a very iconic Kitbash today of Sigismund. Sigismund the character was the first captain of the Imperial Fists, and then later became the first High Marshal of the Black Templar chapters, a successor of the Imperial Fist. He has a very unique look, and I wanted to basically kitbash or convert him into a miniature. Proved a little difficult, I'm not going to lie, just because there's not a lot of there's not a base model to go off of like I did in my Grimaldus kitbash. And again, he does have a very iconic look, so I wanted to capture that as best that I can using a lot of the Primaris bits that I have laying around, and then I did have to acquire some from the internet, either from resin or from other kits. The artwork shown is the artwork that I will be using to base my kitbash off of, and it is the artwork from the John French novel Sigismund the Eternal Crusader, which is all about Sigismund. So to start out, we're going to be looking for a body, and one preferably that has a tabard. So for that, I used the Black Templar Sword Brethren and found this one for two main reasons. One, it has the tabard, and two, it also has a stepping motion similar to the artwork. Now Sigismund has very distinct leg armor, and I actually found this martial that I had partially constructed previously and had pretty good kind of stepped armor, and so I was starting to try to figure out how I can get those pieces of armor onto the legs of the Sword Brethren kit. So this is what it looks like. This is what it normally would look like. So there is a piece that's connected to the tabard that I would have to cut off. So I began by trimming that off and cleaning that up so that we can hopefully fit the new stuff on. Now I do save that martial kit, basically just use the Sword Brethren shin guards and replace that onto the martial kit, so that way I still had the martial model to use. So getting that off, I did notice it's pretty marked up, but again, we do save that later, so I did need to start kind of fitting that up onto the torso. So I put the tabard on so that I can kind of get a look and see how the legs would then start to fit, and how that would look. So here, if you notice on the martial model, the toe is actually included on there. So that made it actually a little bit more difficult to do this. So I had to then cut off that toe, because again, I want to save that for the martial model on the Sword Brethren model that I'm using for Sigismund. But then I also needed to line that up correctly so that Sigismund's legs and feet didn't look too weird. So I started to mark that there and cut it off. And I just simply used my scalpel for most of this. I wouldn't say this went perfectly. I think I probably could have taken my time more when I made the initial cut, but it did take a little bit of shaving and some carving to get that to fit just right, or fit nice enough that I was happy with it. It ended up looking something like this, and I was pretty happy with how this ended up fitting. There is some work that still needs to be done. Obviously, you can kind of see the foot doesn't really match up there, but I think with a little bit more shaving that I do later on, you'll see that that ends up not being an issue. And using some sprue glue is really good. The other side actually ended up fitting up really well and much easier. It took a little bit more to get it off the other martial model, but it did end up looking really nice. So here's where I'm trying to even out those feet, or the bottom of that foot. Again, just kind of carving it away and then using some sprue glue to really get that so that it's a lot more level. I did run into some issues with that once it actually got on the model, looking a little funky, but I think once we got it on the base and everything, and you'll see at the end that it really doesn't affect, it didn't overly affect the model. And again, it's the foot, so not everybody's going to be looking and staring at the feet of this model either, so I was pretty happy again with how these legs turned out. Here you see I start to attach the legs. They attach well, obviously, just because I was using the original legs and used the shin pad or shin guard from the other model, but did take a little bit of fitting, especially on the left leg, the leg that was facing forward. I didn't really love the way that it was lining up with the step. So I ended up mixing up some green stuff so that I can put that in that hip joint to kind of get to reorient the way that the foot was stepping to make it a little bit to look a little bit more natural. It took a lot of finessing, I would say, and I'm definitely not an expert at sculpting or using green stuff, but by the end of it, I was able to get something that I think looked enough like he was making a good step, and it was even enough with the other side. And I think again, once it's all painted, nobody's really going to be looking at his hip joint there, and it'll end up looking really nice. You can see there, if you really aren't looking for it, you're not going to notice it. I think I probably could have spent more time on that part of it, but again, overall, it was a fairly simple process. The next step here was taking the torso and finding some arms that made sense with, again, that pose that I was looking for. I ended up going into my bits box here. These are from the Black Templar sprues, and then I also had some Blade Guard Veteran arms that I ended up going with for this right arm. It did take some modification, I think, to get that set up there. I had to cut off where the shoulder pauldron went. I think it was just a little too big, so the one that I had picked out didn't end up fitting. And then I wanted to adjust. It was he was holding it a little farther out than the artwork that I was using, so I did kind of shave that down a little bit to get it so that it was a little bit more natural looking for a walking pose, and look a little bit more like that artwork that I was using to reference. So I actually got a sword from Archie's Forge online. I can put a link to that in the description. Obviously no sponsorship or anything, but it was a really nice looking sword, and it came with a hand that I could use. So I ended up buying that and getting that in. So I had to carefully cut off the hand from this, and I didn't want to lose all of that gauntlet that you get when you see the Blade Guard Veteran gauntlet. And I also think that helped too, because I think the resin hand that I got looked a little bit smaller than I was hoping it would, and so getting that all lined up, or getting that to look to scale, was a challenge, and having that little extra gauntlet on there I think helps hide that a little bit and hide that conversion there. I decided not to put the sword on yet, just so it was kind of out of the way and didn't get in my way from the other conversions that I needed to end up doing. But here's how the right arm looked. I'm super happy with this. I think once you get that shoulder pauldron on there, it's going to look really nice. So then I can focus my attention on what is the left arm going to start looking like. And for this one, I actually found from one of the Assault Intercessor kits an extra arm that had a chainsword on it that was kind of a perfect fit. I actually had been using it for a couple different color tests, but as you can see here, it looks like it's going to fit real perfect for that stance that I'm going for. Now, like everything, it needed some work. I couldn't just leave it the way it was. I needed to adjust it a little bit. I wanted it to be a little closer to the body and not as far out, because again, this one is actually going to be just a fist or a hand. There's not going to be a weapon in that hand that he has to keep away. So it's really just an idle hand there. So I had to trim that down and obviously take that hand off like I did the other one. Again, being careful that I did not lose that that gauntlet part of the Assault Intercessor's arm there. At this point, I was pretty happy with how that was fitting. Obviously, there was some cleanup work still to do with that arm, but I felt like I could attach it. Ended up using some sprue glue to kind of help fill some of those gaps. Again, because I adjusted that, there ended up being a little bit of a gap there in the back, which again I just had to keep filling with some sprue glue. Again, the shoulder pad should cover up most of that, if not all of that, once we get those parts of that on there. So attaching the hand, I honestly don't know. I don't remember where I got the hand that I found, but it was actually a GW plastic fist. It might have been from the new Sanguinary Guard kit. I ended up using some conversion bits on those when I built those for my Blood Angels army. So I think it's actually one of those fists. I ended up just using some sprue glue to, again, fill those gaps there and attaching that hand. And again, I think looking at this, I was super happy with her where this was. The stance and everything and the step, I think, was coming along really good and looked a lot like the artwork that I was trying to match or get close to. Next, I moved to the shoulder pads. Both of the shoulder pads ended up being from Horus Heresy kits. The one's plastic for the right shoulder, and then the left shoulder with the logo on it is resin. The left one is from the Mark III Command Squad. It's just one of the shoulder pads that come on that kit. The left one with the embossed logo is from the Evander Garrus kit. And that one I found on eBay and it was just a resin piece. I really wanted an embossed logo. I didn't love that that one had the circle around the fist, but I think it's close enough and it still serves its purpose. The next piece, which is also Horus Heresy, it's a Mark III backpack, just a simple Mark III backpack. I did end up cutting that little nub off of the Primaris kit that they used to attach the backpacks, just because the Horus Heresy one didn't have that, or the Mark III one didn't have that. So I ended up attaching that with some sprue glue and just kind of lined it up nicely. This is where the model really started coming together for me. I started to kind of see the end of the line here, and that vision kind of coming to fruition was really nice to see. But the key details were still to come, the first of which being the head. I found this head. It's part of the Assault Intercessors or the Intercessor kit, I'm not sure. But obviously I had to add laurels to it. The laurels did not come on it, so I took those off of my Emperor's Champion. Had trimmed those up quite a bit to get them to kind of fit to the regular head. Piled on a bunch of glue here to put on, and it took a lot of trial and error to get those pieces to stay on that head and then orient them correctly. I spent way more time than I thought I was going to on this part. It took a lot more finesse to get those pieces to really oriented the way that it looked good on the model. Again, just a lot of trial and error. But by the end of it, I was pretty happy. It looks a lot more natural than I expected it to be quite honest. And I think when you look at the artwork, the laurel come to the right place. The only thing that I wish was different was that the service studs were on the other side, like they are in the artwork. But again, overall, I was really happy with this and could move on to some of the other smaller pieces, like the Iron Halo. For this, we went back to the Marshall kit. He's got a nice little kind of relic up on his backpack, and so we snipped off those spikes to kind of replicate those Iron Halo spikes that the artwork for Sigismund had. This proved pretty tedious as well, mainly just getting it to line up and then getting it to stick. I ended up using a lot of glue again and really getting it to line up. I ended up taking the backpack off, so I had some space to work with there. Again, a lot of trial and error and readjusting to make it work. Overall, not too bad. And I ended up getting the result that I wanted and could reattach the backpack. So now that I had the backpack back on, I wanted to get the head on, which ended up proving a little bit difficult. As I went to test fit it, you could see that the Iron Halo was pressing up against where the laurels were. So I had to grind down the back of the laurels a little bit, where I had that sprue glue, and then I ended up using a Dremel tool to basically grind down that area so that it wasn't looking like he was facing downwards and he was actually looking out to where he was walking. Again, just another kind of tedious task, but I'm again overall happy with the result now that I got it all situated in there. I want to take a second to kind of just do a quick comparison and look at this. I think the pose is turning out really well, and then the head and everything else is looking good. So now I can go to the point of attaching the sword. I took just a little bit of super glue and then some finessing, but overall this was also pretty simple. There's really only just one more key piece, and if you know anything about the lore, you guys will probably be noticing that, but it really is the chain that goes around his gauntlet. And for this, I just used some hobby chain I got off of Amazon. It's I believe either 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeter. I'm not sure. I'll link it down in the description, but basically just wrapping this around the gauntlet there and then onto the end of the sword. So this is actually a really cool detail to end on. So in the lore, Sigismund was assigned to go on crusade basically with the world eaters, excuse me, and in their fighting pits when he would spar with them, he picked up what they were doing, which was they would chain their weapons to their arm or to their hands so that they could never basically be disarmed or that they could pull the weapon back to them. This is something that he would take with him and continue to use. And eventually it became a staple amongst the Black Templars as well, where they saw it as a dedication thing. Even if they are too wounded or tired or whatever, and it helped them kind of have that strength to continue to hold their weapon and never be disarmed, essentially. So again, a really cool piece and kind of the really nice kind of cherry on top to make this the Sigismund conversion. Last but not least, the base. I just kind of put some cobblestone or some ruined cobblestones and then some bits that I had to kind of look like some debris in a skull. I used this because it kind of looks like a desolated hive city that looks like the background of his picture from the lore, and pinned him to that cork base. I hope you guys enjoyed it and liked the final model as much as I do. I got a couple more conversions in my head, but as always, if you guys have any ideas, put them down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like.